Hi everybody. For this assignment, we were asked to pick one role of the business manager and look into it a little bit deeper, and I've chosen their role as it relates to transportation with the schools. So today we're going to look at transportation in schools, different forms of transportation, different avenues that we might need transportation in schools. We're going to look at the importance of transportation as it relates to schools, all of the costs involved, the logistics of the bus routes, any concerns that we might have for transportation related to schools, and then we'll close with a conclusion. So transportation is actually used in many areas of school. The first, which we most think of it as, is busing to and from school. Obviously, we use buses to get our kids to our buildings, as well as taking them home at the end of the day. But buses are also used for many field trips. They're also used for sporting team events, away games. Many of the sports teams ride the buses there, as well as school club events. For example, a DECA team might ride the bus to a competition. Also, we need to look at other transportation-related items as they're used in schools. For example, parking lots, traffic signage, and crossing guards. School buses are extremely important when it comes to schools. In a 2010 study, they found that at least 55% of students get to and from school each day on the bus. So that was back in 2010, so it might have even increased since then. That's the last time they did a study. And without buses, we would have to completely rethink our education system. We might have to have more schools that students could walk to. We might have to rework many parents' hours so they could drive their kids to school. We'd have to figure out many carpooling avenues for parents to take part in. Just without the buses, we'd be left in a very big situation figuring out how to get those 55% plus of students to and from school each day. The school buses also allow our students to take field trips during the school day, which gives them those real-world experiences that are extremely important in today's education. So they can go to museums, they can go to parks, they can go to factories, wherever the field trip might be. The buses and the transportation provided by the school allow students to experience those. It also takes the pressure off of the parents and minimizes time they need to take off of work. So instead of needing to get out of work early to pick their child up from school every day, they can ride the bus. Instead of needing to take work off to drive their child to an away game for a sporting event, they can stay at work and trust that their child is getting there safely. It also takes pressure off of the parents during school, like I said, for field trips, which happen during the day. So students or parents don't have to worry about taking those days off for field trips because they know that their child can ride the bus and participate. And lastly, buses improve traffic conditions. One of the articles that I read said that each bus takes about 36 cars off of the road, which is kind of crazy to think about. So without buses, the traffic would be insane trying to go to and from school. Those of you that are parents already know that the drop-off line at schools is something that we don't ever want to participate in. So imagine having 36 more cars in those drop-off lines times the number of buses that your school has. So buses have a huge impact. They're very important to the everyday function of a school. And with important things come costs involved. So obviously, one of the biggest costs would be buying a new bus. So if you have more students, you need to add another bus route or another bus to your routes. You'd have to purchase a new bus. We also have bus maintenance and repairs, so typical oil changes, flat tires, all the way up to major engine failures, stuff like that. Gasoline cost is a really big one for schools to pay for. And then other things to think about that aren't directly related to the vehicle itself: parking lot repairs or repainting the lines, traffic signs, so making sure that stop signs, everything's where it needs to be, bus driver salaries, so paying the people who drive our kids on the bus, and then snowplow services, so making sure that those parking lots are cleared for the buses to come in and drop the students off and pick them up each day. We also need to think about what's more economical. So is it better for us to own the buses as a district, or is it better for us to contract these services out? So depending on the individual costs of each of those, it might sometimes be better just to contract it out. But if you're able to do it by yourself, you might be able to save some money and you would have full control over those types of things. So one of the big things to think about that the business manager would need to focus on would be the logistics of the bus route. So the business manager might hire someone in to do this, or they might do it themselves depending on what their degree is in, I suppose. But one aspect of this transportation is for the business manager to help find the best routes for the buses to travel. So what makes it the best? Well, we can think about the least amount of backtracking. We don't want a bus going back and forth between the school and one specific subdivision or two different subdivisions. Students riding the bus for the shortest amount of time possible. We don't want a kindergartner on the bus for over an hour. Minimizing gas costs. Obviously, the business manager wants to minimize expenses, so he or she will likely try to find routes that have the shortest drives for buses to minimize those gas costs, and also minimize the wear and tear on the bus. So if the business manager is trying to minimize expenses, they will try to minimize the maintenance needed, which means avoiding pothole-filled roads and avoiding bad dirt roads on the back roads, things like that they can do to try and maintain the quality level of the buses. So there are a few concerns to consider when you're looking at transportation, and one of the big ones is seatbelts. So the majority of school buses, at least here in Michigan, do not have seatbelts. So it's important for the business manager to monitor laws that may change that. There might be a law that goes into place saying that buses do need seatbelts, or maybe under a certain age, students need them. Bus driver safety is the big one that the business manager needs to be aware about. Ensuring that licenses are up to date, training those bus drivers on new traffic laws or safety precautions. So oftentimes the business manager will be finding somebody to delegate this to host a training on new traffic laws or safety, but they would be in charge of delegating that task. And then lastly, student safety. So making sure that students go with the correct parent or sitter. The business manager obviously has the student's best interest at heart, so making sure they're not getting off the bus to a stranger. Helping bus drivers to monitor those students crossing the road, making sure they're crossing in front of the bus safely, not into oncoming traffic. So there are many transportation concerns that the business manager needs to keep in mind when they're making those decisions for the school. So overall, school buses are a necessity as they help the majority of our students attend school. So it's not going to be a role that fades out of the business manager's position. They're going to need to stay up to date on all of these traffic and transportation happenings. There are many costs associated with transportation that the business manager needs to consider, especially when doing budgets. One of the articles that I read said that bus transportation makes up 5% of school funding or school budgets across the entire United States. So while that seems like a small percentage, it still does make an impact, and it still needs to be important on the business manager's mind. And lastly, there are many safety concerns involved that should be addressed on a regular basis. So the business manager just needs to make sure, even if they aren't doing it personally, that they are appointing people to ensure that those safety concerns are being discussed and they are being met frequently. Hopefully everyone learned a little bit about the transportation aspect of the business manager's role and everything that goes into it. And I am looking forward to watching the other presentations.